Buenos noches, everyone. Isn't it funny someone made something about each Burning Man? It's just funny what people put time into. Oh, good morning, everyone. We are in the month of September, and I was thinking about September 11th and the last time working at Oppenheimer Mutual Funds. And I think that was building 1. It was to the left if you were going south. And Oppenheimer had put in its own, this is where it started to get more wild, huh? You guys know I went to high school with Smoke Daddy, and he came along in the late 90s and does all of the neon. He was kind of a bad boy in high school. Never really was a boy. It's kind of like a Donald Sutherland type. So Oppenheimer was really proud of themselves because these ad agencies they cost a fortune. And they had hired a guy to do the ad work. And he had a little assistant and stuff, and as proofreaders we were in the same kind of area as him. He had like this big room and we were like at little tables right there. And so I thought I saw one of his ads the other day. I thought, wow, his ad was so timeless that they're still using it, And what he had done was he knew Connecticut pretty well. And one day he just, he said, I'm going to go do an ad now. And he took off and he went to, well, he came back with really great pics. What he had done was he drove up to Connecticut. He threw like a fishing pole in the car and a little British cap, little, I don't know, something with elbow patches, a professorial kind of, these were like just things from him. Like, he didn't even buy anything. And he went up to Harlem on the way to Connecticut, and he found a guy that looked like he would fit in the clothes and who had a good look to him. It was like a retired or just like an African American older guy who was what was he doing? Who was just sitting out front drinking a beer, malt liquor, maybe some wine in the morning. Older African American male. And he said, you want to make a few $100? You look like you would fit in this and that you've got the perfect look. And the guy was like, sure. So he tried on everything fit, and they drove to, see, on some of this stuff they're right, but they have a thing on the outside of the bus saying how messed up Pfizer is. And they wrote that in the 90s, and then everyone who lives here got the dumb backs. And I was like, even you've got stuff saying how bad these companies are. Like, the left is nutty. Anyway, we all know that. So that's not, I thought that was the, Buffy St. Marie. So he took this African American guy up to Connecticut. They found a really nice stone bridge. The guy laid down the fishing pole and, you know, stood on the bridge and looked like he was fishing off the bridge. And it was such a great pic when he came back that, it was like this big New York Times full-length ad for Oppenheimer with this really content-looking African-American man, well-dressed, retired, fishing off of a bridge in what you'd know as a storybook, a storybook life of, he invested in everything right, and this is the fruit of his life, is this enjoyment of just fishing. And, it's all BS, and we know it's all BS. We know even the people that are getting paid to do stuff that it's BS. You see a family in an ad, and the dad is some gay guy, or whatever. It's all a lie. Marshall McLuhan wrote a ton about that. And not only is it a lie, but the people in the lie are the only people allowed to have emotion. We have to sort of be these. If you get too emotional in public or something, right, it's not good. We've seen that. We've seen the meltdowns. I don't mean that kind of emotion. But things like joy, doublemint chewing gum, where people look like they're having orgasms over squeezing toilet paper, this sort of thing. And it's just so weird that we live in this place where, poor little children, they're always told, be honest, tell the truth. And all we do is just lie, and, tell lies all day long. Like a little chameleon jungle. But I wanted to apologize to everyone for not doing enough stuff. I've been working on a book about Sullivan and Cromwell, and it was just too octopusy, right? It was just going too many places. And so I actually took a class I liked at Evergreen. Well, it was an ILC with a fabulous professor who said, well, how did you get to Sullivan and Cromwell? I want to know about your background and where you've been, and if you've been anywhere unusual. I want to know. That's the University of Moscow. And it had like 2 elevators. We laughed about how does anyone get to class, and they're at the top, your little red star thing. And there is my father, Fuzzy, in the trench coat, and to the right of him was a man named Ed from Moscow, Idaho. And this is, I'm sorry if there's stuff that's upside down. There's my grandmother. We were all there, and this was 1976. There's me, and the guy next to me we did not know. That absolutely is not my father. He said he was with the New York Times, and he was really creepy. He was literally trying to purchase me. I didn't know about people being for sale back then, but I was only 14, and I'm like with my family, and he would be like, I live on Central Park West, right on the park. I have a view of it, and you need to come live with me. And I'm like, you freak me out, and I'm 14. And my dad was like, why does that guy keep like walking into pictures? And then the fur coat there, it's hard to tell it is, but That was the ski magazine lady. But yeah, my teacher was like kind of freaked out about it. Like, wait a minute. What were you there? I cut that guy off in this pic. What were you doing there? What were you doing there? And this is on the Volga, by the way. This one is it was called Leningrad then. It's back to St. Petersburg. It's like that song, Istanbul, not Constantinople. Do you know that group? They might be giants. Sorry about my voice. I am taking picture of bus. I am living on bus. Yeah, and I remember meeting a guy named Boris Yanislavtsov a few years ago here, and I had the originals out. These are all up on computer, but he started to weep. He said, "Oh, I remember those old buses. They have them not now." But as you can see, we're there at the Kremlin. And it was winter. It was too cold to even snow. And I'm sorry about the fur hat, and I mean it. I got talked into getting it. There I am, pre-fur hat. There I am, pre-fur hat. With just a little knit cap on. And I think that was the biggest bell. And there in the background, see, this was before you had those kind of tatted up Hollywood Russian mafia types. That was about, is that KGB in background? I don't know. I don't know. But what were we doing there is the question. And we had some strange, there's a lot of missing gaps in time with my dad. See how you could tell the tourists? We were all in things that were a little bit different from each other. See, you can see the patterned coats and things, and the Russians were more in all dark, all serious. And what were we doing there? And I've asked my mom, she and my dad were divorced by this point, and she said, oh God, he was always behind the Iron Curtain. And I was watching things from that time. What was Russia up to? What was going on? And there were scientists, they didn't have the taboos that we have. Like we don't have paranormal research really in college and stuff like that. And they didn't have taboos. It was like, yeah, there's stuff unexplained. There's stuff unexplained. There's the Hotel Rosia, which I heard is no longer there, but at that time it was the biggest. I laughed. I said, we're in Texas. They had biggest hotel. They had biggest bell. And that's the Kremlin right next to the Rosia. Very lovely at night. And then there is the river. Both towns have the river. And that malachite, which I've only seen in little rings. These were huge malachite columns. I don't think we were supposed to really be taking pics. And then these are the pics they sold as postcards. And I remember we all thought they were so funny because the postcards were so ugly. Like, look, we have a road, And here they had like gorgeous things, but lots of postcards like this. And there were some things that really stood out. One were scientists who were actually finding things, and then the scientists would like mysteriously disappear. There was just some weird stuff. Sorry, there's a little British stuff mixed in. I'd gone to Britain not long after that, and I've been moving so much, I just started taking pictures of my pictures, if you know what I mean. This is Avesbury, which is larger than Stonehenge, but as you can see, far more worn down. And there's cows around it. It kind of goes on for a bit. Frequency. Does anyone remember back in the 80s? I think someone even made a song about it, like U2 or something. What's my frequency? What's the frequency, Kenneth? There was an incident that was a defining 1980s incident that occurred. There's my little Chinese box. I had been keeping everything in a sweet little Chinese box that got plundered. Maybe this one didn't. Maybe it's still out there with, see, you can see there's like old little cool photos and things. I even had like old papers from a mine called the Climax Mine. Oh, this is the one that got destroyed by the we won't go into that. At least I've got pictures of it. Everywhere you went, right? Vladimir Lenin. What's the frequency, Kenneth? Is that my grandmother? Is that the one who flew planes? What is the frequency? Oh, there's Elephant Butte. That was a disgusting trip, but I like the picture because, see, my dad always had like a little funny blow-up raft around, and wherever we were, it didn't matter. He'd blow it up and we would like go in the place. But what a gross place. In New Mexico. I usually don't say that about places, but it earned its name, Elephant Butt. And that's me, a little thing in Avery. What's the frequency, Kenneth? And, you know, my dad used to study holograms, frequencies. He was technically a minister. And yet my mom used to say to him, "You're the least ministerial minister I've ever known." He was very into tech, high tech, traveling the world, things like that. And as I've been looking at these research scientists, especially the ones who disappear or die mysteriously in the 70s in Russia, they were studying frequencies. And then I'm seeing strange alliances. And people are telling me about, you know, I don't know, Galen getting together with, you know, Israelis and sharing information. And here Galen was supposedly a Nazi, but he, you know, so there were these kind of, oh, this was a great castle in Wales, Chepstow. And the bathroom was still intact. That was really wild there. Oh, medieval scary stuff. That was from the Tower of London. Here's the Summer Palace. Oh no. Mankin, hold on. I'm getting to the good part. I might have to turn this off. We are on frequency, and we're going to get back to it because I need to bring up the scientists for you to see. Mankin, can you hold on just uno momento? Because frequencies they were finding in people, and that the frequencies continued after death. So there's something about the nature of consciousness, and that was really what my dad was interested in. And he hung out with Viktor Frankl, the Man's Search for Meaning guy. And that book was originally titled Death Camp and Existentialism. Talk about brutalist architecture here. And the title of the book was changed because it was considered too brutal of a title. Look at that. See all those people up there? I guess they were getting bombed during World War II. And our guide said that the families were going up on the rooftops and putting water on the roofs, and of course it instantly turned to ice to do things so that the bombs wouldn't destroy the statues, and it did work. And I was also looking up the gulags to see what kind of MK Ultra was going on there, and they had like various torture devices and things to get information out of people, after the gulag. But it was funny, they said, oh, the greatest torture of all is the cold, and we can't think of anything that outdoes the cold. Isn't that what won them many wars, is just like wait for winter? Did anyone see on the news there was a immigrant in Belgium? They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, who was at one of these eternal flames of an unknown soldier with the skillet frying up cat. It was really freaky. It's just a couple days ago on the internet. Yes, Pokey, watch out. Watch your back. Mankin. Yeah, these are postcards again. That looks like the Wailing Wall, but I think it's just another communist place to get orgasmic over. Oh yeah, oh, the Rolling Stones. I've got Keith Richards' little thing, but that was from the airport. That was fun. Yeah, no, cans, bottles, coolers, alcohol. They took everything from us, and then they were like 6 hours late. People felt like they were dying. Russian house. Yep, there is postcard of Russian house. So, I'm wondering, was that what my dad's interest was in being there? Were we just tourists? Or was there a connection? Because frequencies, and then the whole what's my frequency, Kenneth? Was there some sort of alliance going on? Probably none of this is making sense at the moment. There's the inside of Somewhere English. Now when I go out the door, I see my England no more. But my dad collected stuff from all these places. They would sell these beautiful, they weren't just like crappy brochures, they were like these beautiful historic texts. And when he was going to Knudsen Hall in Oxford and stuff in his youth, he started to collect them, and the feel of them, the 50s thick paper, and I think a lot of them were from Danish presses that, printed out the very best. I forget what town that is. Is that Moscow, or is that some inner city? Inner Russian city. Again, there are those buses. And Then we just have kind of little Russian fairy tale, little folk tale pics. Little folk tale pics. Oh, those almost look like troubadour days, don't they? With their good, fine hats. Okay, sorry if this just was a bit of a jumble, but, yeah, frequencies, after death, consciousness, Teilhard de Chardin, noospheres, and there are some very interesting YouTubes that popped up again regarding those scientists. Look at that. That must be the Tower of London, huh? Sorry, I've got everything jumbled. We did just get back from a walk, but I gotta go. Bye.